Good morning, everyone. I'm Tracy McKibben, the chair of the Finance Committee of the New York Power Authority of the New York State Canal Corporation. I'd like to welcome my fellow committee members, Chairman of the New York Power Authority, John Canal, Dennis Traynor, Michael Balboni, Eugene Nicandri, and Anthony Pacenti. Additionally, to welcome the NYPA and Canal Corporation staff. This meeting has been duly noticed as required by the Open Meetings Law, and I now call this meeting to order. All of the members have had a chance to review the meeting agenda. Are there any amendments that you'd like to make to the current agenda?
I'd move its adoption.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for that motion. If I could get a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any? Thank you. Agenda is adopted. The next portion of this meeting will be held in executive session. I ask for a motion to conduct an executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of a particular corporation and matters regarding public safety and security pursuant to Section 105 of the Public Officers Law.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will now move into executive session. Thank you. I'll now ask for a motion to resume the meeting in open session.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. No votes were taken during the executive session. All of the committee members were polled prior to the meeting regarding conflicts and have submitted all potential conflicts to the corporate secretary for inclusion in the minutes. So at this time, I'd like to invite Adam Barsky, EVP and Chief Financial Officer, to present his report and the following item.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, trustees, staff, public. Just an update on the financials for the first 5 months. Net income was a negative 11 million loss, based on primarily driven by the lower energy prices, some reduction in load and demand, but mostly through the price depression, which was much lower than was originally budgeted. Expenses have been running roughly in line, but there's additional expenses related to the COVID response, really reflecting that portion that would not be reimbursed by FEMA. Next slide, please. Right now, the full year forecast has us at negative 43 million loss for the full year. Again, primarily driven by the lower prices, and then reflected in this forecast are two other major items. One is the issue of the additional RTEP charges related to the HTP line. While that matter is continued to be contested and will be adjudicated over a course of time, we have reflected the liability here in the interim as a conservative measure going forward in terms of the reflection in our full year numbers. The other major item is the fact that our transmission revenue requirement, which begins July 1, 2020 through July 2021, has increased as a total for the transmission year, calendar year, $40 million, of which 20 million of that will be realized in 2020. So those are the two major items, other than the reduction in the energy prices, that lead us to the negative 43 million. We believe that as the months go on, we'll continue to sort of tighten and look at the expenses, and hopefully that number will come in. At the board meeting, we'll give an update on the 6+6. We have basically soft numbers right now, but again, reflecting the RTEP liability, the 6-month net loss is coming in around negative 23 million at this point in time. But we'll have a full update for you at the July full board meeting. Are there any questions?
Adam, just a quick question to help us understand. Obviously, this is just a picture in time, and this is to reflect a full year forecast, and we've had quite a year, right? And so help us understand, where you see going forward over the next couple of months. We've got some serious headwinds. Where are the additional headwinds and concerns that you have that could put some additional pressure on these numbers as you look out for the rest of the year in terms of revenue and our ability to realize the kinds of sales that we've had worked into this forecast and what we expect, what our expectations are. If you could just give us some color around that, that would be helpful.
Sure. I mean, right. This is really a point in time estimate. And as you know, there are a lot of unknowns, uncertainties, and volatility in the market in general during this year. So it's really a best guess at this point. And I think we're being very conservative in that forecast. Certainly, there's additional downside risk on the energy prices. However, we've increased our hedging activity over the last few months, so we believe we've mitigated that downside risk to around an additional $20 million at most. So at least we have our handle on that. And then going forward, we are going to implement a more volumetric hedging approach going into the next fiscal year. So hopefully, as we now implement this new hedging approach, as we go into the year, we'll also reduce volatility in 2021. On the expense side, really the issues this year has really been a revenue problem. On the expense side, we do see some savings by certain projects just not happening now. So some of it's just getting pushed maybe into next year. There is some, I would call it a geography type of effect on the net income based on the pause of capital projects, because it slows the impact of the direct labor charges to capital. So that has a sort of a impact on the O&M by increasing O&M expenses, because you're not getting that reimbursed back into the income statement. That is going to start to tighten as these capital projects have begun to resume. So we will see that also, that variance tighten up between now and the end of the year as the capital projects continue their resumption and the spending takes place. So really, it's just really to see making sure that the energy prices really don't go too much lower than where they are today. One really doesn't know, but it seems to be firming up a little bit at this time.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Well, further to Tracy's point, Adam, so do you see that $90 million in operating margin exposure? You said, okay, it could worst case be another 20. How much of that do you see at this point carrying over into 21 as the ongoing challenge of the new normal versus our ability to see some of that come back as we look ahead?
Well, I think based on where we see the forward curves right now for energy prices, it's depressed in the out years. There were some strengthening in the sort of the out year curves and capacity because of Indian Point coming off the line. So that was sort of holding up the capacity prices. But other than that, we really see it to being flat and lower for longer. What that will do, though, is, again, because of the hedging policy, we'll have more certainty around our risk and our numbers as we go into 21, but we will most likely be locking in at this lower level. So we have to adjust our financial plans to reflect the fact that we're in a low energy environment for the foreseeable future. But knowing that in October, November will help us be able to adjust our financial plan in the following year, so we don't have surprises and we have lower volatility. I think that's the best we can really hope for at this point.
Yeah, I mean, from the business model, what we're doing now to anticipate that, we've got to resize our business model to some extent in light of that. That's all I'm trying to clarify. So
Yeah, and
So
so
this
I would just add that, you know, the greatest volatility obviously is in the merchant generation. So from a commercial strategic standpoint, we're clearly looking at opportunities to contract that power, because beyond kind of bilateral hedges that we could do in the wholesale market, to the extent that we can support the economic growth and competitiveness of New York State and the entities in it, we would be looking to do that, and that's part of some analysis we're doing.
And to your point, Mr. Chairman, about business model, I think we're spending a lot of time and effort on trying to reduce volatility going forward so that we can plan around that. But as we further diversify our revenue sources through the building out of our aggressive transmission program by building new transmission, that gives us a source of a reliable, steady income into the future, because we get for those FERC 1000 projects right now at 7.25% rate of return on that, which has a lot of predictability around it. So having that as a growing part of our revenue picture as a diversifier, will help. And I think that's a big sort of sea shift in our model going forward, to do more of that and have a more stable revenue picture going forward.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Adam.
Sure.
I'd now like to invite any other questions, from the committee. Great. Sarah, I will turn it over to you, and actually Adam will continue to present the next item on the agenda.
Sure. Next slide, please. I've presented in recent times on NYPA's energy efficiency program. If you'll recall, I think 2 board meetings ago, the board approved the funding of energy efficiency program in the order of $1.5 billion to be spent over the next several years, and the related contractor awards for that. It's a highly successful program, as you may recall, for a number of reasons, not only because it helps us, our customers, save money and have bottom line impact, but it also is aligned completely with the policy objectives of the state with the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And because our energy efficiency projects reduce electricity demand, it reduces the amount of renewable energy that would need to be built on the supply side in order to meet the CLCPA goals going forward. Next slide. What you'll see here is the pipeline of our projects under energy efficiency. This is a testament to the strength of the team and the fact that our customers are looking for us to continue to support the integration and implementation of these energy efficiency projects. So we have a very strong portfolio. That being said, as Adam will cover, we have limited financial capacity. We're looking at where we can best put our dollars to effect for returns. And the energy efficiency program from the outset, going back to what the policy objectives were, was not to be a massive moneymaker for NYPA, but really to help our customers effectively manage their energy demand costs and the associated sustainability goals. So from the outset, it has been to cover our administrative costs and to support, in particular, the government entities that we serve as part of this energy efficiency pipeline. So that being said, you'll see here, based on the amortization of the loans, that by 2025, we'd be at about $1.3 billion in terms of financing capacity that would be needed. That is obviously bumping up against, again, competing with other ways that we could use our balance sheet and debt capacity. And so with that, we've been working with finance to identify ways that we can effectively move this program forward and support our customers and their projects. Happy to answer any questions. Okay, with that, I can pass it to Adam.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. Just move to the next slide. Yeah, so what we'll cover is this, based off what Sarah was saying, in terms of just ways in which we can augment our existing lending program for our energy efficiency customers to meet their needs and sort of preserve our scarce capacity. The next slide, please. there was one before that? Okay. So as Sarah was mentioning, given the needs of our customers for loans, right now we assume based on past history that as the program goes, total program spending over the next through 2025 will be $2.4 billion. We estimate based on past history that 55% of those will ask for financing, which gets to that $1.3 billion number Sarah just mentioned in her presentation. Right now we have a $700 million capacity in our CP program to support those loans. As you recall, we did increase our CP capacity through the increase of the revolver for $250 back a few months ago, but that, just to make it clear, that $250 was really for NYPA's corporate uses, not to sustain the energy efficiency program. So we look at that 700 as sort of our existing cap today. So the question is, how do we continue to operate within that $700 million capacity, yet meet the needs of the $1.3 billion going forward, and sort of augment what we currently do? So we had gone out for an RFP for different proposals from different financial institutions in terms of best ideas as to how we could do that. Last September at the trustees meeting, you approved the appointment of 3 banks, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and JP Morgan, to come up with ideas for us. And that has resulted in really giving us 3 options going forward to be able to provide needs to our customers. One is a private placement loan refinancing program, which is going to be offered by Bank of America's Public Capital Corporation. It's a leasing subsidiary. They have an expertise in the energy efficiency market and have a great appetite for certain types of energy efficiency loans, which meets very well for our customers. And the other is really a larger program to meet the needs of our larger customers, which is a bond conduit structure, whereby the loans that will be made to our larger customers will be pulled together and put into a conduit facility, which will back bonds that will be backed purely by those payments from those customers, not by a NYPA's credit or recourse, or limited at best. And then there's our NYPA direct lending program, which we currently have and will maintain as we go forward as an option, so long as that there's not another need that better meets our customers' requirements. And all of these structures will be presented to the customers. They all need to have customer approval before going forward, but we want to make sure that we can meet their needs. Can we go to the next slide? So in terms of our customers, really this is something that's going to help address a lot of some of the issues and limitations that we've had in being able to meet their needs. So one is that some customers have expressed an interest in getting long-term fixed rate loans. Right now we only offer variable rate loans, and we really would not be able to offer long-term fixed rate loans. So these 2 different structures that will augment our existing process, we would have this fixed rate loan option that they would be able to lock into for a longer time. And in many cases today, those long-term rates are as low, if not lower, than the variable rate we're currently offering. Also, it allows our customers to restructure their existing loans. So if they would, up to the life of the useful life of the asset. So if they have a 10-year loan right now on the books with us, and we put it into one of these other refinancing vehicles, they could renegotiate that and stretch it out to 20 years if they want, up to a maximum of 35 years. And it also allows us to be able to make larger forward commitments to some of our customers. One of our largest customers, the MTA, has a large outstanding balance with us. So we're somewhat constrained in being able to say to them, we can take on an X amount of projects going forward into the future. Because of concentration concerns, we're sort of limited in being able to offer them more. Having this other avenue, we can give them that forward commitment. They can start planning their projects knowing that we'll be able to meet their financing needs. And so those are really the big advantages from the customer standpoint. So we've been out talking to the customers, my group with Sarah's group, and there's been a good reception to some of the advantages of being able to access these new financing alternatives. Next slide.
Hey, Adam, before you jump, you mentioned 55% is the historical rate of customers looking to us for funding and financing. Do you expect that what we're doing, or you and Sarah expect what we're doing to increase that rate? How correct am I in assuming we're better able to leverage the capital markets than our customers? We're better able to offer attractive financing programs than would otherwise be available to our customers. I mean, we're clearly wearing a white hat here in terms of enabling the success of these programs. Talk a little bit about, I'm frankly surprised it isn't higher. So editorialize a bit on the other 45% or the potential for what we're doing, bringing more of them I'll say our side of the table or the collective side of the table to further enhance the growth and expansion of these programs.
Yeah, no, I think you raised a really good point in terms of the fact that I think one of the things that sort of, if we had to say is limiting it to being broader and expanding, some of the limitations I was raising before that now would be available, would be the fixed rate, and also the fact that a lot of our customers, most of them are, they're municipalities. All the municipalities right now are under different degrees of stress, whether it be liquidity, credit. So coming through our vehicles or being pooled, the pooling of, say, 5 or 6 municipal credits has a combined effect of having a better credit than either of those on a standalone basis. Right. The case in point I would use is the MTA. The MTA, whose credit spreads have jumped almost 300 basis points. By being into our pool, then there'll be a limitation. It can't be greater than, say, 30% of a pool. But given that, they would actually get a much better rate, a significantly better rate, being part of the pooled financing with us than they could go out and get on their own. And given the challenges that they're having this other avenue or vehicle takes a little bit of the pressure off for them based on their other capital needs. So they see the attractiveness of this, and I use them as an example because they are one of our biggest customers and our biggest users of the financing to date. But yeah, I think to your point, having these other alternatives may very well raise that percentage of those customers who will want financing.
Yeah, and I would just add that the historic kind of 55% is just based on our existing customer base and how they've approached these projects in the past. They've obviously been financed during construction, but several of them just choose to pay a capital one lump sum payment at the end of the construction, and that's just their modus operandi and how they like to do business, and they have the capital in their budgets that they want to use, right? But again, as we go forward, to the extent that the economy and the COVID pandemic puts greater strain on those capital budgets, it's possible that some of those customers that historically would not even choose to have the longer term financing might opt for it. So again, it's very helpful to be able to provide this type of service should it be requested.
Thanks.
Next slide. So just to give you a sense of how the pipeline goes or how these things will evolve, there's a negotiation between NYPA and our customers about project design concepts. Once a project's green lighted and approved, they sign a CIC and it moves forward. We fund it through our construction work in progress sort of account. We fund it internally with our own resources, and then at construction completion, the customers will really have 2 options. They can either pay us back, pay it off at full in a lump sum, as Sarah was just mentioning, or choose one of the financing alternatives that we will be offering. And as I mentioned before, the 2 new ones, the private placement and the bond conduit sale, they appeal to different potential needs. The one we're looking for a recommendation today to move forward is to allow us to do the assignment of certain loans to the private placement loan vehicle through Bank of America. That really appeals to some of our smaller customers who have shorter loan requirements. The Bank of America facility will not go really beyond 15 years. In general, 10 to 15 years is sort of their sweet spot. So customers that want longer terms would not be eligible for that. But some of our other smaller ones certainly would opt for that. And we can also do a very quick execution and turnaround on those loans, whereas on the conduit sale, we need to really build up a critical mass and be able to have the right pool size to be able to sell that package into the capital markets. That would be, say, a once a year event that we would do going forward, whereas the Bank of America approach, we can meet current needs as they arise, and like I said, have quick execution. But so they each have their sort of pros and cons, if you will, but having them together is a good complement to what we are currently doing. And again, the other option available will always be NYPIT's continuing to do it the way we have been, and there will be cases where we will find that to be the most desirable for us and our customers is to do it more traditional loan as we have done in the past. Next slide. So basically, we've in our discussions with Bank of America, they've done due diligence on a number of the loans we currently have in place, and they have, from a credit standpoint, approved our ability to assign to them right now $100 million. Again, pending negotiations and approval by the customer. So all these are required that the customer approve it and find that it's advantageous to them. And then we would be asking for an additional $100 million beyond that in the future, so that we would have a capacity through this particular vehicle of $200 million, and that we would start doing those, in the third quarter, as we, also work on ramping up the conduit approach, which we hope to get done by the end of the year as well. Next. So just, this is really just a conclusion. Basically, we can, having these alternatives allows us to not only meet our needs of our customers, allow the program to grow and to be able to sustain the 5-year forecast that we're looking at. Certainly preserves our own debt capacity. As I mentioned before, we have $700 million of CP capacity for this program. Over time, that may come down in terms of what's going to be allocated to this, but at all times, we expect to still be a meaningful amount of CP capacity dedicated to the energy efficiency loans. And again, I think it just allows us to provide these different options to the customer that, as you said, Mr. Chairman, that will probably increase the amount of loans that we will be carrying on behalf of our customers. So today we're just really asking for the committee to recommend to the full board the ability for us to assign up to $200 million of energy efficiency loans through the private placement vehicle, which is the Bank of America Leasing Corp. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Adam and Sarah. I guess just to make sure that for the committee that we understand, because you laid out 3 different approaches or options that we have, and today we're just focused on the private placement loan, and it's the work that you've done on this, I think, puts us in a good position to be able to offer an advantage to our customer as well as flexibility, and then at the same time as giving NYPA's balance sheet some breathing room and some additional capacity to expand this program. That's clearly one of our priorities. So great effort on behalf by the team to give us this flexibility to be innovative in how we're approaching our ability to continue to prioritize this program and expand this program. But again, today we're just focused on the private placement loan. You're going to come back to us before the end of the year on the conduit portion, and then obviously leaving room open for if at some point we need to adjust our process where we focus more on making sure that it's clear that NYPA is committed to this and that we're there and we're willing to step in if the occasion occurs where there's some stoppage of the ability, whether it's Bank of America, because right now they've only agreed to 100 million and we're going to approve up to 200 million. So just make sure, just checking, and Adam and Sarah, make sure that I'm clear, that I've got correct how I see what we're focusing on today, at the same time demonstrating our continued commitment to this program and offering and expanding it to our customers as they need it and want it.
Yep, I think you characterize it perfectly.
And again, the customer, we're still the point of contact for the customer, right? I mean,
yes,
the customer's interfacing with us, and we're who they will interact with. So while you've done a great job of creatively starting to refinance and restructure the funding, the customer, that's a bit of a seamless interface there on our side. The customer just will continue to interact with us, and will be all the more receptive and responsive. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. That we will always be in front of the curtain, regardless of what's going on behind it, and
Right. Yep.
and servicing all these loans. And if there's any bumps in the road or issues, we will be the one that will be there to resolve those and face the customer on those issues.
Yeah, and generally
On that
speaking,
point,
sorry.
Adam, are we facing both ways? Are we facing the customer and the bank as the backstop on this too?
Well, we are facing the customer, and we are also, negotiating on behalf of the customer various terms with the banks to ensure that it's meeting those needs. But we are handling that part of it. So that's all happening by us. When we say backstop, we are not, the ultimate, obligor on the loans will be the customer.
Yeah, there's
They
no
are
recourse
required
back
to make
us,
these payments,
right?
but we will be there to support the process to ensure that the loans are structured in a way that meets the needs of the customer.
Good. That was my understanding. Yes. Thank you.
Well, I'd echo, Tracy's points. Kudos effort. I'm happy to move the request as presented, Tracy.
Great. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Well
carried.
done, guys.
Thank
Well
you,
done.
team.
Look
Thanks.
forward to hearing more.
Okay. At this point, we will bring in Patricia Lombardi, VP of Project Management. We'll discuss the next 3 items on the agenda under utility operations.
Thank you, Chair McKibben. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Close to good afternoon. I'm going to present 3 items on behalf of utility operations. The first is the capital expenditure authorization and equipment procurement contract award for the replacement of the Plattsburgh Auto Transformer number 1. So today we're requesting that the Finance Committee recommend a capital expenditure authorization in the amount of $11.8 million and the approval of a 2.5-year equipment contract award in the amount of approximately $7.3 million to Royal Smit Transformers of the Netherlands, including a waiver of Article 22, steel components from the contract agreement language, to Board of Trustees at the July meeting. The existing transformer number 1 at the remote Plattsburgh substation failed in December of 2018 and was taken out of service. Following an extensive evaluation of the condition of the transformer, several alternatives to repair, retire, or replace the asset were evaluated. Due to the extent of the damage, high cost of repair, and critical nature of this auto transformer, the ultimate recommendation is to replace the unit. As such, the project scope includes the dismantling and disposal of the existing transformer, procurement and installation of a new transformer, addition of a new disconnect switch, and upgrades to ancillary facilities and equipment. The contract scope with SMIT includes the design, manufacture, delivery, assembly, and commissioning of 2 new auto transformers, one for Plattsburgh and one for the Robert Moses Switchyard, also at St. Lawrence. The Robert Moses replacement project will be discussed in further detail in the next item. At this time, detailed design is scheduled to be completed next year, with transformer delivery and installation scheduled for 2022 depending on approved outages. A request for proposal was issued in November 2019, and 5 proposals were received in February 2020, which were reviewed by a cross-functional committee. Among other evaluation criteria, the proposals were reviewed based on cost, technical and commercial requirements, quality, as well as relevant experience, including the firm's safety records. Following an extensive evaluation process, the committee recommends award to Smith in the amount of approximately $7.3 million for a 2.5-year term, including a waiver of Article 22 steel components from the agreement. The total project estimate is $12.1 million. To date, $3,000 has been approved, so the current request of $11.8 million will authorize the balance of funds to complete the project. To date, approximately $250,000 has been spent. The number is inclusive of expended internal labor costs and monies paid for and or accrued for contracted services rendered to date. So thank you. I'll take any questions and ask for your vote on this item.
Trish, I guess I understand what happened here is the plan had been to do maintenance, and we went in and discovered that we actually needed to we reevaluated that and decided to do a wholesale replacement. And so that's why. Is this an additional cost than what we had you'd originally budgeted? Am I reading that right?
No, Chair, sorry. There was a failure of the unit. It wasn't during routine maintenance or planned maintenance. There was actually failure of the unit. And I apologize. I think Joe Kessler was going to make some intro remarks on the 2 auto transformer failures. So I don't know, Joe, if you wanted to lead with some comments, maybe we should start.
Yeah, I can touch base. There's going to be another item on an auto transformer, so we thought it would be important to give context to the Finance Committee. So thank you, Trish, for that, and thank you, Chairperson McKibben, on that. Yeah, there are going to be 2 transformers in these list of items that Trish is bringing to us for approval from the Finance Committee and a recommendation to the board. One is the Plattsburgh Substation AT1 that failed in December 2018, and then there's another one that was a transformer failure that was in January of 2019. The reason we wanted to kind of point out given the current context of the executive order on our evaluation of supply chain management, we wanted to make sure we assured the board that we did do full root cause analysis on both of these failures, and Trish will be presenting the second item shortly. In this particular case, this was actually, I think, an intrusion of a rodent in our 13/8 switchgear that caused a fault. So nothing nefarious here. This does happen in utilities on occasion. It is a matter of routine maintenance to inspect these cabinets, but of course these things can be developed pretty quickly. So this is an area where we have a failure due to that. The second failure that Trish will be talking about is actually a similar failure in terms of it was on the low voltage side, the 13/8 kV side of the transformer. And but that failure was actually due to a low side or a switchgear failure of Eaton substation, Eaton equipment that we're working with Eaton on a root cause analysis for that as well and replacement. That work was actually scheduled as part of the transmission LEM anyway. So in terms of the 13/8 switchgear, so that is actually an incremental cost and based on really reprioritizing that scope of work for what we're doing today. So I just wanted to put that in context because there's a lot of talk about sourcing of transformers specifically with the executive order that's out on sourcing. And of course, we have some NERC requirements for supply management as well, NERC CIP 13, and there's some alignment on that. In both cases, we're not suspicious of any of the defects of this piece of equipment. These are failures of equipment outside the GSUs themselves that caused arcing within the transformers. So. And I also just want to thank Trish and the board for allowing me to talk about transformers for a change. I think it's a technical discussion that's always fun to talk about for me. So thank you for that. But if there's any questions on those items, please let me know.
Discussion that you usually lead, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe, what's the effect of the steel waiver here that we're approving?
I'll actually defer to Trish on that, Judge. There's some requirements on that waiver that need to be described that supply chain management helps us with.
Sure. So, Judge, to answer your question, in the Public Authorities Law, which Article 22 of the agreement language refers back to that law, it states that a public authority for any equipment contracts that are over 50,000, if there's any components that are to be made of steel, which obviously the tank and some other components of the auto transformer are largely comprised of steel, that steel is supposed to be all sourced from the U.S. or substantially sourced from the U.S. unless the governing board of the public authority determines that this would result in unreasonable or unfavorable costs. So with this, we did receive 5 bids, like I said. There was only one other vendor that did propose U.S. Steel. However, their cost was higher than Smith, and additionally, that vendor did take commercial and technical exceptions, so the team did not determine them to be the best value. So we are here requesting that the Finance Committee recommend to the trustees that we grant a waiver from that article in the contract agreement language.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a waiver of using steel. So that's
No, definitely not.
okay.
Okay, why don't we just for ease of efficiency, if there are no other questions, why don't we just do all 3? You just go through all 3 and then we'll just have a motion with all 3 together.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So here's the second item. This is for capital expenditure authorization for a replacement of the Robert Moses Auto Transformer number 2 project, also located at St. Lawrence. So with this item, we're requesting that the Finance Committee recommend a capital expenditure authorization in the amount of $4.5 million to the Board of Trustees at the July meeting. As stated by Joe, this existing auto transformer at Moses failed in January of 2019 and was taken out of service. So similar to the auto that we discussed at Plattsburgh, we did the same evaluation on this transformer, looked at ways to repair it, retire it, and ultimately the recommendation, again based on the damage and cost to repair the unit, is to replace this auto transformer as well. So the project scope includes dismantling, disposing of the existing transformer, procurement and installation of a new transformer, and upgrades to the ancillary facilities and equipment. As stated in the previous item, the replacement auto transformer for Robert Moses is included in the Smith contract that we discussed under Plattsburgh. The schedule here is similar to Plattsburgh, with the design being scheduled to be completed next year and installation in 2022, again depending on approved outages. The total project estimate is $14.8 million. To date, $300,000 has been approved, so the current request of $14.5 million will authorize the balance of funds to complete this project. To date, approximately $200,000 has been spent. This number is inclusive of expended internal labor costs and monies paid for and/or contracted services rendered to date. So I can take any questions, Chair, or I can roll right to the gates and then take any questions at the end and ask for your vote.
Yeah. Any other questions on this? I mean, it's the same company, right? That's going to be providing this transformer.
Yep, same contract. Yep. It's
Any
two
other
different
questions
capital authorizations. I'm sorry, 2 different capital authorizations, but same contract award.
And I would just point out too for the committee that we have this manufacturer in our fleet already as well that have been in service. So we have a lot of confidence in this manufacturer from that perspective as well.
Thanks. Okay, you can keep going, Trish.
Sure. And the next and final item, thank you, is the Wicketgate Procurement Contract Award in support of the Mechanical and Electrical Upgrades Project in support of the Next Generation Niagara program. So today we're requesting the Finance Committee recommend approval of a 15-year equipment contract award in the amount of $12.7 million to Alstom Renewable US of Greenwood Village, Colorado. And similar to the item before, including a waiver of Article 22 steel components from the agreement to the Board of Trustees at the July meeting. The contract scope includes the design, manufacture, and delivery of 11 sets of 24 wicket gates and 3 spare gates. The proposed spending is in alignment with the original Next Generation Niagara program. It's included in the approved 4-year capital plan and is included as part of the capital funding authorization that was already approved by the trustees in 2019 for the overall Next Generation Niagara program. A request for proposal was issued in December 2019, and 8 proposals were received in February, which were reviewed by a cross-functional committee. Among other evaluation criteria, the bids again were reviewed based on costs, technical and commercial requirements, quality, as well as relevant experience, including the firm's safety records. Following an extensive evaluation process, the committee recommends award to Alstom in the amount of $12.7 million for a term of 15 years, again, including a waiver of Article 22 from the contract agreement. The total Next Generation Niagara program estimate remains at $1.1 billion. To date, the trustees have approved $224 million. As stated earlier, this $12.7 million contract commitment is included in this current capital authorization. As such, we're not requesting the release of any additional capital funds today. So thank you. I'll take any questions and ask for your vote.
Trish, I guess the question that I have for you and maybe Joe as well, obviously we're doing these waivers. There's no potential political concerns around these waivers. We feel confident that, you know, we've checked the universe, we know what's out there, and we tried to comply with it. So these waivers, are there any concerns that you have or that there might be?
Sure, yeah. Sure, we've done, like I said, bids came in February, so it's been under review for quite some time. We did get 8 proposals, so it was well represented, I would say, in the industry. Most of the bids, except one, was sourcing from the U.S., and the bidder that was proposing to source from the U.S. Put in a price proposal that was 50% higher than Alstom. So after, much due diligence with the team, there were also questions that went back to the vendor, maybe challenging them on the price, asking some questions. Again, based on the proposal that came in from Alstom, and not just their cost, they did propose what we consider to be a superior manufacturing technique and a higher quality product. So from a price standpoint, as well as the quality of the proposal that they put in, the team is recommending to go forward with Alstom.
Any other questions from the committee? If no other questions, I ask for a motion on the St. Lawrence 8 FDR power project replacement of the auto transformers, as well as the Niagara power project upgrade request. If I could get a motion on the 3 items.
So
So move. Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carried on those 3 items. Thanks, Trish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I will invite, I think, Sarah, you've got a team member who's going to help you pitch this one. If you'll introduce that team member on the next item around commercial operations. Is that right?
Yep, sure. There are 2 projects that are going to be presented on behalf of commercial operations. They both are highly supportive of the CLCPA in moving us towards 2040, where we want to have a carbon-free electricity sector. I think they're both examples of the strong commercial mindset that we have relative to innovative projects and strong financials. Going back to what we were talking about before in terms of our business model and portfolio, we in the grid scale business development team are very focused on transmission and diversifying the revenues from the generation assets that we have because they provide fixed income and fixed returns. And I think that this project in particular is very aligned with even the most recent legislation, the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, which is looking at trying to develop and meet the governor's objectives of cross-state transmission to move and integrate renewables from where the resources are to where the load is. So without further ado, I'll introduce Girish Bahal, who joined NYPA in March as our new Vice President of Grid Scale Business Development and the Project Development Licensing Team.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. Good morning, Chairperson McKibben, trustees, staff, and the public. Can we go to the next slide, please? Just a brief background on the project. Originally, this project was identified as a part of the AC transmission blueprint by the STAR study in 2012. Subsequently, in 2015, the New York State Public Service Commission ordered New York ISO to conduct a public policy transmission process for Segment A and Segment B, which would relieve the transmission interfaces. New York Power Authority and LS Power submitted a joint proposal in 2018, and we were picked as the winning proposal for Segment A by New York ISO in April of 2019. As a part of the proposal, we have retained roughly 37.5% of the total project, which increases the asset base for NYPA by 99 circuit miles. Next slide, please. We have received various approvals from the board during from 2016 onwards through early part of this year with respect to the overall budget for the project and the development agreement between the Power Authority, LS Power, and New York ISO. Currently, we expect the project to be in service by the end of 2023. From a financial perspective, the annual revenue collection that's expected is roughly $20 million a year over a period of 65 years of the asset life. NYPA and LS Power both were approved to receive a return on equity for 9.95%, which includes about a 50 basis points adder, risk adder for CWIP, transmission abandonment, a number of other risks associated with developing FERC 1000 projects. We expect the actual rate of return to be close to 7.91 in 2021 based on a 50-50 debt and equity split. Next slide, please. We would like to request the Finance Committee to approve the acquisition of 37.5% of the ownership stake in Segment A AC Transmission Project to the Board of Trustees.
Great, thanks, Girish and Sarah. So, am I reading this correctly? We've already approved the expenditure, the cost of this acquisition. We're now effectuating it. So, and we now know that this will give us a 37.5% stake in it. But the outlay of our portion of that was already approved previously by the board.
That is correct.
Is that rate of return subject to review?
At this point, no.
Great. Any other questions? If no other questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve this ownership stake. Can I get a second? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. It will be sent to the full board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Girish. And again, welcome. I will now invite Evan Polkos, Senior Manager, Customer Business Development, to present the next item on the agenda.
Great. Thank you very much, and good afternoon now. Trustees, everyone in attendance today, so thank you very much. Next slide. Today we'll be we're requesting approval to go forward on a back-to-back power purchase agreement between the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and a selected developer team of Goldman Sachs and Sun Group. Just for a little bit of background, this contract structure that we're requesting today was approved for a similar project at the Jacobs Convention Center by the trustees back in September of 2019. For a little background on this project, our Clean Energy Advisory Service team, which is really tasked at the Power Authority under Sarah's leadership to look at incorporating and implementing renewables and battery storage solutions at our customers' locations. So back in early 2019, the Power Authority and the Port Authority had multiple discussions where the Port Authority, the Power Authority in this case, to move forward on a potential project, which we're here today for, at JFK International Airport. Our team in-house at NYPA did development of that project, put together a bid specification. In April of 2019, we initiated an RFP, a public solicitation, to the marketplace requesting for developers to respond to this particular project. 11 proposals were received through this, through a evaluation process comprised of a team at both the Power Authority and the Port Authority. It was deemed that the Goldman Sachs SunPower team would be awarded this project and selected to move forward. Through this back-to-back contractual mechanism, The developer will own, operate, and maintain the system throughout the process. Here, in this case, the Power Authority is simply obligated to purchase the production generated from the system at a predetermined fixed price, in this case for a term of 20 years. So our annual estimated cost is slightly over $850,000 a year for a term of 20 years, which puts us slightly above $17 million for the total cost. All those costs at the Power Authority will be recovered in full, both by what we call our advisory services fee. That's our cost recovery fee that we get paid for the initial process of this project up until it gets to the construction point. We recover those costs all up. Additionally to that, we are recovering our costs on a yearly basis for managing this contract through the term of the 20 years as well. And just for a little bit of project specifics on this, this is really a first of its kind project, not only in New York City, but New York State. It will be the largest known behind the meter solar plus battery project in New York State. I think Sarah touched on it earlier. This really, for both the New York Power Authority and the Port Authority of New York and Jersey, really hits their goals tremendously to the CLCPA and internal to the Port Authority as well. So this will be a very large project. In addition, ancillary to the power purchase agreement, which we're requesting today, there will be a component of a community solar project, which that power will be administered throughout the local residents of the airport surrounding JFK and will provide direct savings to those residents surrounding the airport. So again, today we are requesting the Finance Committee to approve this back-to-back execution. And thank you.
I guess I was just a little confused. I don't. It's a different terminology than what I'm used to, and maybe I should understand. So what does the Port Authority have to do? Where are we buying the power and using the power? What's the role? Because the developer is the SunPower Goldman Sachs group, right? And then we're doing PPAs, which means we're purchasing. We're the off-taker. So what's the Port Authority? What do they have to do with this? Why are they listed as?
Yes, really good question. So NYPA will execute the agreement with the SunPower Goldman Sachs team. In turn, NYPA will execute a power purchase agreement with the Port Authority. The Port Authority, per the terms of the agreement, will purchase the energy capacity, any of the environmental attributes that are generated from the solar and battery storage system through the term of the agreement. The ability that we have at the Power Authority is using our team, our contract mechanisms. We sell the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey as a direct NYPA supply customer. This is just an ancillary contract to selling them that supply. So the Port Authority will be obligated to purchase all the production that we are purchasing from the Goldman Sachs SunPower team.
So is this like a virtual PPA for us? Like we buy it and then we're selling it to the Port Authority? Is that what this is?
Yeah, Tracy, if I can add to it, it's Gil. We already buy all of the electricity for the Port Authority today. We're their load serving entity. So instead of buying more so whatever this solar project will produce, it will displace what we buy, some of what we buy for them from the market.
Okay.
Right. So we, yes. And so currently we're in an intermediary position here because we're the contracting party, we're bringing it to you because that NYPA is assuming liability as a result of our agreement with the Goldman Sachs consortium. But we are shifting the risk and the actual value to the Port Authority relative to our contract with them. This is unique. Structure going forward. We're not necessarily looking to be always an intermediary with our customers. We actually are looking at continuing to be trusted energy advisor, where we can still support the contracting the scoping and the selection of the projects. But with other customers, we actually are helping them negotiate the PPA directly with the developer and taking our advisory fee. Again, because we are a electricity supply customer to the Port Authority, it provided a little bit more simplicity relative to how we are billing them and how we're serving them more generally. But again, our preference will not be to always be an intermediary, in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I would think that Port Authority could do this contract themselves directly. Okay.
They could, but because they buy their electricity from us already, it was just easier for them to have us do it on their behalf because we manage their entire portfolio anyway today.
Okay.
That's why it's easier. And the one thing that I really want to point out why this project is so unique is it's large. It's one, if not the largest so far in New York State from a solar installation and with storage. The other thing that's unique about this is what Evan mentioned, that some of the output of this solar installation will be provided to the local communities surrounding JFK at a discounted rate. So it's a facility that will serve the needs of JFK, which is owned by the Port Authority, but also will have benefits to the local community around JFK.
What's the size of this? We're saying it's the largest development. How many megawatts?
Sure. So the energy that'll serve JFK directly is 7.2 megawatts of solar, and the generation that will serve the local surrounding communities is approximately 6.2 megawatts.
So this PPA is for 13 megawatts. 14.
The PPA itself is for 7.2 megawatts. The PPA that we're asking for today is strictly for what will be supporting, to Gil's point, the energy supply for JFK that we're doing. The community solar portion of this will be a direct host site agreement with JFK Airport and the developer. It's part of the overall package, though, if you will. We got economies of scale, and the reason why we kind of took this kind of contractual mechanism with the Port Authority, because it was a complex project. We wanted to synchronize and streamline as much as we could. So we were able to get the economies of scale for the community solar portion while not including that in the back-to-back PPA.
Any other questions from the committee? There being no further questions, if I could get a motion to approve
So
this.
moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. It will be recommended to the full board. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you very much.
All right. Daniela, I think you're up next, our VP of Digital Transformation and Chief of Staff, to present the next item on our Digital Transformation Office.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and good afternoon, trustees, fellow staff, and public. The Executive Office refreshes the pool of available consulting firms under contract every 3 to 5 years based on the needs of the organization. These services have been centralized within the Executive Office where there's direct oversight. I've come before the Finance Committee to request that you recommend the approval of a 5-year master service contract award in the amount of $30 million to 13 firms for energy and environmental analysis, policy development, and planning to the Board of Trustees at the July board meeting. The master service contract will allow NYPA to quickly solicit and negotiate services for future scopes of work relying on the provisions in the master agreement for common terms. So for some background, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, signed into law by Governor Cuomo in 2019, has set New York State on a path to reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This target will have profound impacts on the energy landscape, including the generation mix, energy markets, the role and operation of existing generation and transmission assets, and the demands of our customers. In addition, the recently enacted Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefits Act tasks NYPA with leading the development of major transmission projects that can help move renewable power into the grid. In order to better understand and prepare for the impact on NYPA's business, the Executive Office, with the support of various business units representatives, issued an RFP in November of 2019 to pre-qualify firms with expertise in energy market analysis and modeling, carbon pricing, strategic planning, energy storage, and many other areas you see listed on the slide before you. 104 suppliers viewed the request for proposal, and we received 19 proposals. A cross-functional team consisting of representatives of 4 business units evaluated the bids based on financial stability, domain expertise, relative experience, and track record, among other things. The committee recommends that a master service contract be established, including the 13 firms you see listed on the slide before you. Once the contract is approved, this pool of firms will be accessible to all business units, who will have the ability to seek proposals with pricing for defined scope of works. Firms will be asked to provide a plan to meet MWBE and SDVOB goals as part of their proposals. I now ask for your approval. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? This is just a sort of an umbrella agreement for services to be determined to assist NYPA in this category. And we've just sort of thrown in every possible consultant that's out there.
Basically.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Next up, we've got a quick discussion on risk management. I'll invite Tom Spencer, Senior Director, Enterprise Risk and Corporate Insurance, to give us an update.
Okay. Thank you, Chairwoman McGibbon, and good afternoon to you and other members of the Finance Committee. During today's presentation, I'll be discussing 2 areas of focus for the risk management team. I don't know if you want to make sure I'm on the right slide here. Yep, okay, we're good. Go back one, please. Perfect, thank you. So during today's presentation, I'll be discussing 2 areas of focus for the risk management team. The first area is how the risk management team helped NYPA and Canals to prepare for and respond to the COVID-19 crisis. The second area is relating to key risk indicators and how we're looking to develop new ones and expand on the existing key risk indicators that we have. I want to start by providing some specific examples of how risk aided in the preparation for the pandemic response. In 2017, the risk team led the establishment of a business resiliency program where we developed and stood up a holistic business resiliency framework, ensuring collaboration and enhancing the relationships between business continuity planning, disaster recovery, emergency management, and the physical security functions. This included the update to our business continuity plans, where we looked at the loss of human resources for reasons that included events such as a hurricane or a pandemic. We also performed business impact analysis, identifying those processes and programs critical to NYPA and Canal's operations in order to ensure those items were addressed in the updated business continuity plans. At the beginning of 2019, the business resiliency program was subsequently transferred to utility operations for deployment and integration into the day-to-day operation of NYPA and Canals. In addition, the business resiliency program, the enterprise risk team conducts annual risk assessments where we use a cross-functional approach to reassess existing and identify new risks. And it's during this process where we identified external environmental drivers. Those drivers included hurricanes, pandemics, floods, snowstorms, and they were drivers across multiple enterprise-level risks. By identifying these drivers, NYPA and Canals were able to better prepare for events such as a hurricane or a pandemic using drills, exercises, or enacting policies and procedures serving to enhance our capabilities to anticipate and respond to disruptive-related risk, making NYPA and Canals more resilient organization.
Move to the next slide, please.
Yep. So in terms of, what does all that activity and work that I mentioned mean? Well, within the first few weeks of the pandemic, leadership didn't only respond swiftly, NYPA management responded decisively across multiple fronts. As always, employee health and safety is paramount importance and the number one priority for NYPA and Canals. From working at home to wellness checks to employee sequestration, the authority took all measures possible to ensure employee safety. On the financial front, leadership enacted a capital and O&M pause, worked to contain cost, and continued to move forward with the bond issuance in order to ensure adequate liquidity. In addition, NYPA leadership focused on our customers. We employed a rate freeze and offered a deferred payment plan for our economic development customers. From a risk perspective, the risk management team was part of the daily ICS committee, where we developed a COVID-19 risk registry and assisted with the scenario analysis of the COVID-19 infection rate and its potential impact on essential staffing. During this period, the insurance team also worked to support the bond offering by compiling a comprehensive overview of NYPA and Canal's insurance portfolio used and published in bond offering documentation. In short, NYPA and Canals leveraged all the resources it had to respond to the pandemic in a way that enabled us not only to bounce back quickly, but bounce forward. You can go to the next slide. So as a result of the pandemic, the risk management team also reviewed some of the activities and identified some key risk insights. From the COVID risk register, we saw how our risk profile changed quickly due to the stress of the pandemic. Risks that we were concerned about previously were now escalated, such as liquidity or customer creditworthiness. New risks, such as return to work or cost recovery, were now at the forefront of our business. We realized many of our risks evolved and needed to be more closely monitored. For example, risks such as the second and third pandemic wave would need to be monitored and made sure that we were again prepared to respond. Our data privacy management exposure had expanded as well as we collected more personal information through our health and wellness surveys and COVID testing. The good news is many of the activities we are already performing or planning to implement have helped to mitigate the top and evolving risk. The continuing deployment of the enterprise governance risk and compliance system and the rapid risk assessment process will better position NYPA and Canals to act in real time as our risk profile shifts and disruption-related events occur at an accelerated pace. In addition, the insurance team is reviewing the NYPA and Canals insurance portfolio to gauge the impacts of the pandemic and tracking developments in the insurance marketplace to better position NYPA and Canals to take advantage of possible coverage alternatives. And finally, the monitoring of risk and key risk indicators has been magnified due to the pandemic. By using information from the annual risk assessments, working with the business units, and looking at external benchmarking, we'll be able to better identify metrics that help us to anticipate disruption events and add to the overall resiliency of NYPA and Canals. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, part of the lessons learned from the pandemic was regarding the enhanced importance of key risk indicator monitoring and reporting. As a result, we've been working to expand and update the KRIs we track. We've decided to group the KRIs into 6 categories that cover the crucial aspects of our business. And as you can see on the slide, those categories are strategic, financial, operational, human resources, and compliance. And we've also added some key risk indicators around the pandemic to monitor that. As I said, we want to make sure we're watching for a second and third wave. As part of this process, we have worked with the business units and risk owners and leadership to set KRI thresholds in order to determine when KRIs enter a potential warning zone. It will need to warrant further investigation, and depending on that investigation, maybe even further management escalation. So if we look at the slide itself, we'll see that under the current reporting status, those with the red radio button indicators on this slide are in the strategic and human resources category. The strategic and human resources categories, most of the reasons, or all the reasons that they're in red at this point in time, are due to COVID and the pandemic. We do expect those to trend back more towards the green area, or the green indication, as the year progresses and we bring more projects online and the construction projects around the energy efficiency projects are unpaused and we restart construction there. And as far as the human resources KRI, part of the problem, or the reason that is red, is because of the delayed process it took when we're looking for background checks over the past several months. So we do expect, as we progress as far as the later phases of the pandemic, that also will trend towards green, and the background checks and other third-party relationships we use when hiring will trend towards green. That's a brief summary of my presentation. Certainly be happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairwoman.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that, and it was just an update. No votes are needed or necessary here. I will. One ask is to come back at some point, whether it's through the full board, Mr. Chair, to talk about the impact around, have a fuller detail around increased cyber risk in light of the adjustments we made in response to the pandemic, all the work from home. I do think it would be good to get a more detailed briefing on what we did and what we're seeing there at a later time, a more appropriate time.
Absolutely, we can work with Casey to make sure that happens. We've been working with him on these very issues, so we're happy to come back with an update.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? No. Great. Thank you. The consent agenda is before the committee for adoption. I'll ask for a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is adopted. Motion carried. The next joint finance committee meeting is scheduled for September 23rd, 2020. I ask for a motion to close this meeting before we run out of time.
So moved.
Put another quarter in.
All in favor, say aye.
It's only digital now.
I'm out of quarters. Sorry, gotta go.
So, any opposed? Great.
Aye, I'm in favor.
Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Remain safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too, Tracy. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, bye.
Take care.